The Gower Peninsula, which in 1956 was designated Britain's first area of outstanding natural beauty, is visited by tens of thousands of visitors each year and is renowned the world over for its natural aesthetic charm. Its rugged, magnificent cliff scenery, golden beaches, and a plethora of rare species of flora and wildlife attract people from all backgrounds and age groups, and have been the inspiration for many artists, writers and poets, including Swansea's own Dylan Thomas. In addition to its natural gifts, the Gower Peninsula is steeped in the history of its various human inhabitants, with a vast array of historic attractions, including Iron Age forts, early modern castles, medieval churches, and ancient abodes, encapsulating the imaginations of all its visitors, no matter how young or old they may be. Yet, all along the coast of Gower, there is evidence of the all too easily forgotten ferocity with which nature can greet its human visitors. The broken remnants of ships from numerous ages litter the beaches and coves of this golden peninsula. Some are visible, while others are lost to posterity. Others live in the realm of legend, with tales of wealth, treachery, dispute, heroism, and camaraderie surviving, where the vessels did not. Whatever a person's interests are, be it geography, nature, mythology, history, or even extreme sports, Gower will cater for all expectations, and always leaves a desire for further visits to uncover the magic of this unique corner of Wales. We shall begin our journey through Gower in Upper Killee, a small village bordering the vast expanse of Fairwood Common. The common itself begins at this small cattle grid, which, judging from this scenery, literally divides rural Gower from urban Swansea and its suburbs. To the naked eye, Fairwood Common may seem a barren place. But as you travel along the South Gower Road, its rugged beauty comes to the fore. Anyone familiar with the Common will know that here animals reign supreme, crossing the busy road at will and at the most inopportune of moments. Motorists should remember, however, that as this is common land, the grazing sheep, cattle and other livestock have the right of way. As you travel from Killee along the South Gower Road, you will notice Swansea Airport. Originally built in World War II to protect Swansea and its environs from the marauding Luftwaffe, Swansea Airport is now a regional recreational aerodrome. A short distance from the airport is Kilrue Manor, an imposing 18th century manor house now used as an educational centre for young people. The 18th century manor house is itself a development of an earlier abode, as it is situated on the foundations of a structure first built by Roland Dawkins in 1585. This is thought to be the original manor house, called Landgrove. The next stage in our journey takes us to the Bishopston Valley. The village of Bishopston lies at the valley's head, and in years past was a centre for market gardening. Now mainly a residential area, Bishopston has had its share of fame, for Dylan Thomas wrote his longest poem in this house. Bishopston Valley is a rugged wooded valley that follows the meandering Bishopston stream. The valley is renowned for its geological and botanical rarities, and is a truly stunning setting. Bishopston Stream empties into Puthdi Bay, a quiet cove sitting amidst an inspirational rugged cliffside. Nestling at the foot of the valley are two houses, the only sign of human habitation at this stunning location. Because of this, few people realize that this area was once the hub of a busy limestone industry, which once provided employment for 200 men and women. This important industry helped forge ties between the people of Puthdi and North Devon. As a consequence of its secluded location, Puthdi was also a favourite haunt for smugglers hoping to evade customs duties. But then, smuggling was a lucrative business for many of the isolated communities situated along the rugged, indented Gower coast. At Puthdi Head is the ominously named Graves End. In 1760, a navy vessel, the Caesar, carrying 100 men press-ganged into the Royal Navy service, ran aground here. Around 90 bodies were recovered by locals and buried in a mass grave, marked by this circle of white stones, which themselves are only visible during the winter. Many of the men pressed into service were from the Swansea and Gower areas, and it is from this mass grave that Graves End derives its name. After passing Kilvrew Manor, you will come to the village of Park Mill, the most notable landmark being its old water mill, which has been painstakingly restored over many years. Now a tourist attraction run by the Gower Heritage Centre, the mill, set in a beautiful, peaceful location, provides an educational day out for school children and adults alike. On a more sinister note, visitors should be wary of two resident ghosts reputed to haunt the watermill. The first is the famous Will the Mill, a former resident who ran workshops here for many years in the 20th century.
My old water wheel has been turning now for at least 700 years, very near 300 years in our family.
The other is the less well-known Lady Maliphant, who was captured near the mill after a bloody skirmish during the medieval period. Parallel to this fine landmark, a path leads through this pleasant wooded area to two sites of particular historical interest. The first, set in a sizable field used as a scout's camping ground, is one of Gower's oldest attestations to the presence of ancient man. It is, of course, the Neolithic tomb, popularly known as Giant's Grave. First uncovered in the 1840s, Giant's Grave has been a source of great interest for archaeologists hoping to learn more about prehistoric man's spiritual and social behaviour. Around 40 skeletons have been uncovered during excavations over the years, and the actual structure of the tomb has taught archaeologists and historians much about the behaviour of Gower's ancient inhabitants. As for the age of this tribute to megalithic industriousness, this is difficult to ascertain. Modern analysis places Giant's Grave's original construction period in the region of 3500 BC. Yet whatever its exact date or the meanings of its architecture, there is no conjecture surrounding the fact that this ancient gravesite is a fascinating attraction and another piece of the magic of Gower that keeps people pouring into this glorious peninsula year after year. As you continue to ascend the path surrounded by park woods, you will eventually come to an impressive Victorian hunting lodge, Parc le Breos. The name Parc le Breos is derived from the Norman family, de Breos, who owned the hunting ground and on which this secluded building now stands. It too is surrounded by park woods and is now a stunning location in which holidaymakers can enjoy a peaceful and relaxing visit to Gower. Also of architectural interest in Park Mill itself is the West Glamorgan Guides Activity Centre, an imposing 100-year-old mock Gothic former school. The next phase in our journey takes us to the tiny hamlet of Ilston. This delightful ancient parish sits aside the meandering River Ilston and is one of the most tranquil places you are likely to find on the whole of the Gower Peninsula. Among the historic sites visible at Ilston is the historically intriguing St Illtyd's Church. Legend has it that the large yew tree within this stone-walled area, sheltered Britain's earliest Christian missionaries. The building itself has been modified several times since it was first built in the 6th century. Indeed, the present facade probably took on this appearance in the latter Middle Ages. This antique church is a truly fascinating historic site and is another fine attribute to the rich tapestry of Gower's history. At the other side of the Ilston Valley, near the Gower Inn, are the foundations of the first Baptist chapel in Wales, founded in the mid-17th century by John Miles, another site of particular historical interest. The very same John Miles would later emigrate with his followers to the then colony of Massachusetts in North America, founding a small town which was named Swansea. From the ruins of Wales' first Baptist chapel, follow the meandering Ilston River and you will eventually come to its mouth, which empties into the glorious Three Cliffs Bay. The beach here is one of the most atmospheric and picturesque you are likely to find in the whole of Wales. The subject of countless paintings and photographs, Three Cliffs is dominated by three unique pointed stacks from which the bay derives its name. Dramatically situated on the edge of the valley of the Pennard Pill, with a sheer drop to its north and west, and enjoying panoramic views over Three Cliffs Bay, is Pennard Castle. Built in the early 12th century by Henry de Beaumont, 1st Earl of Warwick, this structure has had a particularly unfortunate history. In the early 14th century, it had to be rebuilt due to extensive damage caused by the encroachment of sand, transported by heavy winds. Unfortunately, this very same problem led to the abandonment of the reconstructed castle later in the same century. Even a small village and church built here in the 1530s had to be abandoned because of the sand blow problem. Natural dichotomies aside, however, the view from this vantage point is sublime and is worth visiting the castle ruins just for the scenic beauty visible from its remains. On the opposite side of the valley at Penmaen, there sit the ruins of a castle and church, which were also overwhelmed by shifting sands. There is also a 5,500-year-old tomb near this site. Within the village itself, you will see the St. John the Baptist Church. It is thought that this church was moved to Penmaen from Parc Le Breos during the 13th century to make way for the Le Breos hunting park. The current church was reconstructed during the 19th century and bears little resemblance to its original design. As you travel further west along this aesthetic peninsula, passing Nicholston and its attractive 19th century church, you'll come to the famous village and bay of Oxwich. The beach here is a favourite with locals and tourists alike and is always busy during the summer months. At the foreshore of the bay, you will see the coal house, which in bygone years was used to store coal delivered to Oxwich Bay via the sea, a pertinent reminder of the importance of the coal industry to Wales' economy during this period. Despite the beauty of Oxwich Bay, the coast around Oxwich Point is a treacherous one and has been the graveyard for many vessels that have run aground here over numerous centuries. At low tide, some of these wrecks are still visible. Those wanting to visit Oxwich Point will need to be reasonably physically fit. In addition to a fair walk across the point's farmland, you will need to climb these steps, nearly 300 in total, that rise from near the church. Anyone who undertakes this challenge, however, will find ample reward in the panoramic views you will enjoy from the summit of the point. Surely Oxwich's most celebrated man-made landmarks are its castle and its aforementioned church. The term castle is a slightly misleading way of describing this 16th century edifice. Technically, the current structure is a fortified manor house, built by the Mansells, a family who played an important role in Gower's history between the years 1520 and 1580. The castle has had something of a blighted history during the time it has stood here. In the year 1557, Anne Mansell, who was at this time in charge of the castle, was killed by a stone thrown during a riot. And what was the cause of the conflagration? It was a dispute between the Herberts and Mansells over the right to the bounty of a French cargo ship wrecked in Oxwich Bay. By 1632, the Mansells' principal seat had shifted to Margam, and Oxwich was leased as a residence. By the 1940s, the house was in poor condition, but was rescued from demolition by a Lady Apsley in 1949. In state care, the castle was partly restored and conserved, and is now maintained by Cadw, who run it as a public educational attraction. Also of architectural interest in the grounds of this mansion cum castle is an impressive 16th century dovecot. Oxwich's original church was founded on this site by St. Illtyd in the 6th century. The structure you see here, however, was developed over succeeding centuries. The fact that the church has been dated to the 6th century seems to suggest that a village may have been established in Oxwich at this time. Legend has it that this ancient hamlet was grouped around the church on the edge of the cliff that was washed away by coastal erosion, though there's no concrete evidence to confirm this. That said, situated as precariously as the church is on the cliff's edge, it is understandable why such a tale should have survived. Indeed, the original rectory, sited beneath the church, was washed away in 1805. The new rectory, built in its stead, is now the Oxwich Bay Hotel. For those interested in the natural life of the Gower Peninsula, mention should be made of Oxwich's extensive National Nature Reserve, home to a wide variety of very rare plant and bird life. It is also a popular route with ramblers, which should be treated with the utmost respect and care by all its users. It is truly a natural treasure. A short distance from Oxwich and its myriad of attractions is Penrice. The village here is very small, so it is perhaps surprising to learn that this tiny settlement was once the principal social hub of Gower, hosting markets, fairs, and even prize-fighting contests. There are several sites of historic interest at Penrice. The first is St. Andrew's Church, which is situated near an overgrown Norman motte. The structure was probably built in the 13th century, but may have been developed from an earlier work. Among its various guardians were the Knights Hospitaller, warrior monks fabled in Europe until they were suppressed by the Catholic Church, following allegations of heresy. Just outside the walls, demarking the boundaries of the church, are two small stones engraved with crosses. It's not known for certain what these markings denote, though it is thought that they are the resting places of those who committed crimes so grave that they were buried in unconsecrated ground. In the graveyard of the church is the infamous murder stone, which marks the resting place of Mary Kavanagh, a local widow murdered nearby in 1829. The poignant inscription on her headstone reads, "To the memory of Mary, wife of James Kavanagh of Penmine, who was murdered by," the gravestone is blank here, "the 3rd of October, 1829, aged 75 years. Prepare for death, make no delay. She in a moment was snatched away." In front of the church on the village green, you will see the base of an old cross, popularly called the Crying Stone, because it was once used by the village crier. The most imposing and recognisable structure in Penrice is surely Penrice Castle. Located to the north of the church, the castle, first constructed in 1237 by Robert de Penrice, is an extensive, impressive structure. It has had many tenants since it was first built in the early 13th century. During the Wars of the Roses, it was held by Philip Mansell of Penrice, who actively supported the House of Lancaster, although now, standing in the privately owned Penrice Park, a public footpath does allow viewing of the towers and elements of the curtain, or walls, for those unfamiliar with early modern military lingo. Situated beneath the 13th century castle is the more modern 18th century Georgian mansion of Penrice. Set in fine landscape gardens, it has many typical Georgian features, most notably its large windows, and enjoys fine views over Oxwich Bay. First built for Thomas Mansell Talbot, this beautiful mansion is still used as a private residence. 1 mile west of the village of Penrice, near Horton Caravan Park, is Hangman's Cross. It was at this infamous location that a gibbet was erected to mete out grisly fate to sheep stealers. A short distance from Hangman's Cross, just off a bridle path, is Beggar's Pit. This large orifice in the ground is so called because condemned men were held here and would beg for their lives before being executed. Another of Gower's finest beaches is situated at Port Eynon. It will be of no surprise to learn that this is another bay and village with a colourful history, stretching back to a period well before tourism became a staple of the local economy. The traditional quaint village of Port Eynon derives its name from an 11th century Welsh prince named Eynon, who built Port Eynon Castle somewhere within the vicinity of this charming village. Unfortunately, this fortification is now lost to history. The Church of St. Catug, one of Port Eynon's most recognisable landmarks, is clearly visible as you walk or drive through the village on your way to the beach. It is a Norman church, dedicated to St. Cadog, a student of St. Kenneth at Llanlynith during the 6th century. Within the grounds of the church, you will find an impressive marble statue of a lifeboatman. The sculpture is a tribute to those brave souls who gave their lives saving others assailed by the beautiful but ferocious sea. Like many other maritime communities, Port Eynon has seen its fair share of vibrant economic activity. During the 19th century, limestone quarrying and oyster fishing were the two main industries based in this eye-catching marvel. But Port Eynon's most famous industry was that of salt production, reflected by its most recognisable structure, the aptly named Salt House. The building itself can be traced to Elizabethan times, when seawater was evaporated to produce one of that period's most coveted commodities, salt. Later in its history, however, it became the home of John Lucas, who fortified the building. His reason for modifying the house in this way was quite obvious once you've learned of his occupation. He was a pirate who preyed on shipping in the Bristol Channel. Lucas was not alone when it came to stretching the boundaries of the law. Indeed, smuggling was a particularly profitable business in 18th century Port Eynon, just as it was in many of the other isolated communities along the Gower Peninsula. Another remnant of this illicit trade can be found at Culver Hoe, which lies beneath Port Eynon Point in Overton. Originally, this structure was probably an old pigeon loft, though it has been suggested, among other theories, that it was an outpost of Port Eynon's lost castle. As a consequence of its unique design and concealed location, it was deemed perfect for hiding smuggled goods and other contraband items. Among those said to have utilized this hidden den was John Lucas. Also at Portainen Point, mention should be made of a memorial stone to Dr. Gwent Jones and Mr. Stephen Lee, founder members of the Gower Society. As we have seen, Portainen is a true marvel, both geographically and historically. That is why today it is a top tourist destination, attracting many holidaymakers, particularly during the summer months. One of the finest walks in Gower is from Portainen Point towards Worm's Head at Rosilly Bay. It is on this route that you will pass some of the most rugged, secluded small beaches in the whole of the British Isles. These include Falls Bay and Muselade. Also on this route, 2 miles west of Portainen, are the famous Paviland Caves. It was within the famous cavern, known as Goat's Hole, that the Red Lady, a Paleolithic skeleton dated to 22,000 BC, was found. Later evidence would show a slight error in the term lady when describing this skeleton. It actually belonged to a male. Paviland's Caves are 2 of the most invaluable caverns located along the rugged shore of Gower. Other sites of particular historic and archaeological interest include Minchin and Bacon Hole, carved from the cliffs near Southgate and Pwthdy Head, respectively. At Minchin and Bacon Holes, the bones of animals such as hyena, bison, elephant, and rhinoceros have been excavated. These animals are thought to have inhabited this region when the sea levels of the Bristol Channel were considerably lower than they are today, enabling animals to graze on what is now the sea floor. Anyone interested in visiting these caves should do so with extreme caution. The routes to them are often dangerous and should not be undertaken without full knowledge of the dangers you may face. The easiest route to Rosilly Bay takes us through the villages of Pitton Cross and Middleton. It is thought that Pitton may have been home to an ancient cross, hence the addition of the word cross to the name Pitton, though we can't be certain of this. Central to Pitton is the Great Pitton Farm, one of Gower's oldest agricultural ventures. The village has also had associations in its past with smuggling and the famous preacher John Wesley. Middleton is best known for its connections to the famous Edgar Evans, who accompanied Scott on his last expedition to the South Pole. It was in School Lane, in this small cottage in Middleton, that Evans was born. At the tip of the Gower Peninsula is the vast stretch of golden sand known as Rosilly Bay. The village of Rosilly and its magnificent natural surroundings are steeped in history and today form the jewel in the crown of Gower's tourist industry, attracting surfers, walkers, rock climbers, hang gliders, or those seeking a relaxing beach holiday. Within Rosilly itself, you will see St. Mary's Church, built in the 13th century. Unique to this church is its carved 12th century Norman doorway, the only one of its kind in Gower. In the church's graveyard is a memorial stone dedicated to the many sailors who have lost their lives on Rosilly's beautiful but dangerous shores. Inside the church itself, you will find a memorial to the aforementioned Edgar Evans. Another of the fine walks in Gower is from the Worm's Head Hotel to Rosilly Point, and then, if you're inclined to do so, over the causeway to Worm's Head. This, however, should only be attempted at low tide. On the route from the hotel to the point, you will pass a number of sites of particular historical interest. You will see the old Coast Guard cottages, now 2 holiday cottages and a National Trust shop. The recently uncovered Old Castle, Iron Age camp, and many small limestone quarries. You will also be walking parallel to farmland known as the Vile. This is the ancient open field strip farming system of Rhossili, stretching from St Mary's Church to the headland. Crossing to perhaps Gower's most recognisable natural wonder, the serpent-shaped Worm's Head, via the aptly named Devil's Bridge, is a memorable experience, but should not be undertaken without considerable care. Worm's Head is home to a fascinating variety of natural wildlife, which is why it has been designated a nature reserve. Rhossili Downs are the highest points in Gower. Here you will find cairns, scattered stones, and ancient burial chambers known as Swain Howes. According to local folklore, the Scandinavian founder of Swansea, Sweyn, is buried here. A more modern ruin is also situated further along the downs. This former radar station was built in World War II and was part of an interlocking air defence network designed to protect Britain from the Luftwaffe. Rhossili Bay, like many of its counterparts in Gower, has been a graveyard for many unfortunate vessels. Ships that have run aground here include the Helvetia, a Norwegian wooden bark wrecked in 1887, the city of Bristol, the remnants of which can be seen at low tide, and the El Dorado. The latter is popularly known as the Dollar Ship, as it probably carried the dowry of Charles II's future queen, Catherine of Braganza. Silver dollars, pewter, and navigational equipment were uncovered from the vessel on 2 occasions in the 19th century. This valuable plunder would lead to a dispute between the villagers of Rhossili and Llangennith over the rights to this booty. It is thought that the stricken vessel floundered near Darles Lake, but no evidence of its existence has been uncovered since the 19th century discoveries. However, several people strolling along the beach have been known to find a silver dollar. So, you never know. You may one day strike it lucky. At the foreshore of Rhossili Bay, overlooking the beach, is an old white building known as the Old Rectory. Once the residence of the rector of the parish, it is now a holiday cottage owned by the National Trust. Visitors should be wary of staying here, however, for this residence is reputedly haunted by the ghosts of sailors and smugglers. At the opposite end of the bay, past the village of Llangennith, is Bury Holmes. Bisecting this famous landmark is another of Gower's invaluable Iron Age fortifications. But perhaps the island's most recognisable and well-known ruin is its medieval monastery. It is believed that this monastery was established as a memorial to St. Kenneth, a 6th century pioneer of Christianity, who was among the first Christian missionaries to the British Isles. It is thought that he had close connections to Bury Holmes. Hence a centre of pilgrimage dedicated to his memory was built on the island. At the tip of Bury Holmes are the curiously named Spaniard Rocks. Perhaps they were named after the Spanish sailors washed up here from a shipwreck. Another tale is that Spanish sailors from a stricken vessel buried their treasure somewhere off the rocks here. Either way, the name suggests there has been a strong connection between sunken Spanish vessels and the bay here. Near Bury Holmes on the North Gower coast is Blue Pool Corner, named after its supposedly bottomless rock pool, the Blue Pool. In the 18th century, and on one occasion in the 19th century, gold doubloons were found by locals in the rocks here. These are thought to have come from an 18th century troop transport ship, sunk while carrying gold specie and soldiers to Bristol. After discovering the coins, locals began blasting the rocks with dynamite, but were eventually stopped by officials concerned by the damage that was being done to the rocky cliffside. Overlooking the marshes of the Berry Estuary is another of Gower's fortified manor houses, the impressive Wobley Castle. Much of what is visible at Wobley today can be traced to the early years of the 14th century, when work first began on this fortification under the supervision of its first owners, the de la Beer family. The basic structure of the castle was not substantially modified until the 15th century, when it was held by Rhys ap Thomas, a controversial character who went against his family's traditional loyalties and served the House of York during the bloody Wars of the Roses. It was he who added the porch block to the castle to afford a more grandiose entrance to the hall and to provide private living quarters. Now run by Cadw, the castle is a tourism-based historic monument and houses an exhibition which tells the story of Wobley and many other ancient sites in Gower. The final step in our journey takes us to the renowned Arthur's Stone, perched on top of the rugged Cefn Bryn. According to local mythology, the fabled stone was planted here by King Arthur, who found it in his shoe and threw it from Carmarthenshire to its current location. Touched by the hand of the king, it is said to have grown with pride, and its surrounding stones raised it high with admiration. The truth, though not as dramatic as the myth, is that this is another of Gower's fascinating Neolithic tombs, constructed around 2500 BC. Indeed, scattered around the vicinity of the burial chamber are many smaller cairns. The legendary Arthur's Stone is the capstone of the chamber. But then, how do we explain the split-off portion? According to legend, this is where King Arthur's sword was entombed before that Roman Celtic monarch released it. Other possibilities are that the slit was caused by a miller searching for a millstone, or the more plausible natural phenomena of frost or lightning. Whatever the truth, this site, enjoying panoramic views over Gower, Carmarthenshire, and the vast expanse of the Bristol Channel, is a parody of the glorious Gower, a place of magic and enchantment. Our journey has taken us to many of the natural and historic attractions indigenous to the Gower Peninsula. Of course, the only way this area of beauty can be fully appreciated is by actually visiting it. The beaches, countryside, and historic marvels of this glorious corner of Wales are the reasons why Gower is a top tourist attraction, and is why the region is a true, perhaps unsurpassed, area of outstanding natural beauty.